Welcome to the Chain Podcast. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Scott Luton. Scott is the founder and the CEO of Supply Chain Now, the #1 voice of the supply chain. With decades of experience amplifying industry insights and leading conversations that matter, Scott brings a unique perspective to today's discussion. So join us today as we unpack insights from our annual conference that we just completed in Columbus, as well as reflecting on some of the key takeaways from 2025. But we'll also dive into the trends shaping the future of supply chain in 2026, the rise of AI, workforce evolution, as well as the growing impact of climate and circularity. Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Abe, delighted to be here. Really appreciate what you're doing with the podcast and this element of the greater ASCM community. And thanks for the invite.
Having you on the other side of the microphone is a little bit of a unique experience for both of us here. But all right, I'm going to start you off with something to test your brain a little bit. If you had to describe the future of supply chain as a movie genre, are we living in a sci-fi thriller? Are we living in a coming-of-age story? Is it a workplace comedy, or is it a fantasy? What are we living in right now?
What a terrific question. All right, so first thought that comes to my mind is I like this phrase that I think is very accurate. What's old is new again. And I see it play out almost every day. And it's kind of a good thing, right? Because we always discover proven timeless best practices. So Groundhog Day comes to mind to describe global supply chain in some ways, but there's also an element of Star Wars and Back to the Future. And of course, it would have to be a little bit of rom-com, which I learned is romantic comedy because of the human element and because we got to maintain a sense of humor, especially in these challenging times. So that's a really flexible answer. But hey, a lot of good stuff lives at the intersection of movies and supply chain, huh?
And we're all living that movie, aren't we, today? Almost every one of us today are living those different types of experiences.
Hour by hour, that's right.
Yep. We just released the top 10 supply chain trends at our conference, and we highlighted some of the technology, geopolitics, workforce dynamics that are really, intersecting and reshaping our strategy as well as supply chain. Not surprisingly, and I don't think anybody is surprised by this, the #1 trend that was identified was artificial intelligence, moving from optional to essential. Over the past decade, we've seen different trends, though, Scott. I mean, we've seen blockchain, drones, RPA, even 3D printing pitched as the next big supply chain transformation or revolution. Some have delivered incremental gains, others have fizzled out. They haven't really delivered on the promise. So what do you think, Scott? Is AI different from the previous, sort of implications of technology and, some of the, things that we were hoping would be truly revolutionary?
Abe, it's a great question. To be another question, well, inflation might be a trade, another question. But by the way, great event in Columbus. I think we'll probably circle back on that. But AI. I wouldn't sleep. What's old is new again. A lot of things you mentioned, they haven't come to fruition as in some cases as big as a lot of folks thought. But it's interesting at the velocity of technology evolution and the new things that will be unleashed and unlocked in the coming months. And I wouldn't be surprised some of those things coming back and maybe even making their presence and their impact known in bigger ways. But AI. Gosh, I think it's government regulations that I mentioned AI 7 times in every conversation. I think you find that somewhere in U.S. tax code. But I got three views on AI. So I'm a big history nerd. Let me start here because I think this really establishes some important context. So Norman Joseph Woodland and Bernard Silver were granted U.S. patent 2612994 for classifying apparatus and method, which they described as an article classification through the medium of identifying patterns. Now, those identifying patterns became known as barcodes. In 1974, the first retail transaction, which was a 10-pack of Wrigley's Juicy Fruit gum, was sold with the barcode being scanned first time ever. And now, of course, what do we do without barcodes? Not just retail transactions, but in getting stuff moved, all this stuff, right? And I bet back in 1952, when the patent was first issued, Norman and Bernard had no idea the links and the prevalence and the impact that their invention, how it would be used. And I'm here to tell you, Abe, I think there's a strong parallel to where we are with AI. I think a year ago, we wouldn't, we weren't talking about what we're talking about now in terms of the impact and use cases. Where it'll be in 6 months, especially with the increasing velocity in different ways and different use cases and different applications. And gosh, 6 years. So I think looking back in history, I think we see some parallels that really apply to AI.
It's interesting that you point out sort of the evolution, because this really has been evolutionary. It is not revolutionary. It is built upon a lot of the investments and sort of learnings that we had from the past. But one of the misunderstandings about AI is treating it as purely automation, as opposed to augmentation in terms of the relationship with the the talent side. How should organizations really think about the human machine dynamic, as opposed to just another technology solution, which has always been the promise of the Holy Grail? It will solve all your problems, your control towers, your ERP systems. How should we look at this?
Well, Abe, as was a dominant theme in Columbus, digital transformation starts with humans and the beautiful human factor. All right, otherwise, we wouldn't have digital transformation. So, yes, we are in the golden age of supply chain tech, but the leading organizations and the most successful leaders out there that I encounter and rub elbows with and learn from are folks that put humans first. And that's how they start any transformation. And they apply tech. They first start with, okay, what's holding our human team members back? What do our customers want? And the answers to those two powerful questions, and then apply technology in a targeted manner. Man, that's where the eureka moments are coming. And it delivers not only outstanding experiences, value for the customers, which is, why we're all here, but it creates better and better and easier days for our team members. So that's what comes to my mind. But get this, because there's some bad news related to AI. I'm going to eat our frogs first here. You ever heard that saying, eat your frogs first in the day? Tackle your toughest tasks first. Yeah, that's what I learned from a buddy of mine in metal stamping. Anyway, the shiny object syndrome is showing. So get this, according to data published by CIO Dive, the share of companies abandoning most of their AI initiatives, it jumped up to 42% this year from 17% last year, right? Now, not everything can work. So we should expect some of that, right? Because if we don't see some of that drop off, then we're not really pushing envelopes and trying creative things, right? We know the value of failing, right? But killing almost 50% of AI initiatives across the board. Wow. So why is that happening? Well, it's a big part of it. I would say is it's a leadership issue. One of the primary culprits is how many of us, and I'm pointing the finger at me, are trying to apply AI to every problem within the four proverbial walls or across the enterprise. Abraham Maslow, right, the originator of the hierarchy of needs, that's something we all had to learn in high school, said once, quote, "If the only tool you have is a hammer, it is tempting to treat everything as if it were a nail," end quote. That's a very costly form of cognitive bias. But those leaders that have been there, done that, they're learning and applying and adapting. They build a strong business case where especially the boardroom knows the bottom line impact. And then they communicate in a compelling story first way. So the workforce knows why and what's in it for them. Man, those are where that leads to great things, and all that is good news to me. But we got to know what we're doing. We got to apply in targeted manner, and we can't just acquire it and throw it over the fence to our team to figure out what to do with it, right?
Well, let me dig into that a little bit more, Scott. I mean, it's the report, implies that increased urgency around AI. And again, you and I have been to how many, conferences over the past years, and it's AI in front of everything. It doesn't matter. And what do you see as the most underrated barrier to adoption? Is it data readiness? Is it talent? Is it leadership?
Well, there's a couple thoughts here. So adoption, as we all know, is a major problem across all technology applications, and it's not a new problem; it's a timeless problem, right? So we got to keep that, I think, front and center. But I think one of the greater challenges, at least this has been a big theme from a lot of my conversations this year with technologists, with change agents. I don't code, and I'm learning like everyone else out there when it comes to AI. But it's a mindset issue in terms of an under recognized issue. We've got our workforce, and all of us have to adopt our mindset and be willing to try and try and try and critically apply not only how we prompt, but how we problem solve, what we apply AI to. I think for a lot of us, especially the non-technologist component of industry, I think AI and a lot of the different tools, the real AI tools out there, because we know that they're throwing AI on a lot of things. It can be unapproachable, or it can feel to be unapproachable, and we've got to solve that barrier. And that brings me to my third point. It's a leadership issue. As a great leader once told me, and it's always stuck with me at a ASCM Atlanta event years and years ago, there's no blinking in leadership. And if you look at the most fundamental, biggest challenges of our day, usually it's some sort of leadership failure that we've got to address and correct. So those would be three thoughts when it comes to the challenge of adopting and making even more progress when it comes to AI.
Scott, you brought up the talent issue before, and I want to dig into that a little bit. Our trends, the top 10 trends indicated that, workforce development, I think, was coming in at number 5 in the rankings here. We emphasize, obviously, workforce development and the challenges of developing a competent, capable workforce. We've seen the skills gap. We've seen talent scarcity, demand for new capabilities. They're intensifying. How do you characterize the current workforce imperative in the age of AI relative to the talent that we're looking at? Are we hiring the right people? Are we focused on the right talents for those individuals in the jobs today?
And you're asking some tough questions here today. I'm glad I had my Wheaties this morning, Abe. So two thoughts, two of the things you touched on, right? Quantity. We were talking movies earlier. That big line in the Jaws movie, hey, folks, we're going to need a much bigger boat. We do. Because here in the golden age of technology, we need a lot more human know-how and talent. We had Carolyn Lee, President and Executive Director of the Manufacturing Institute, with us earlier this year. And speaking, we think of supply chain holistically, right? It encompasses everything. And manufacturing is part of global supply chain. I think you view it the same way. She shared that a recent study shows that U.S. manufacturing is going to need 3.8 million workers, just manufacturing, by 2033. And current projections have 1.9 million of those jobs that may stay empty. So we got that's not just a stat, that's a big wake up call. It should be, right? We've got similar challenges across other aspects of global supply chain. We got to be a better ambassadors for our industry and get upstream, get in schools and do a lot more and get creative how we solve that. But the main question you asked is how the skill sets are evolving, right? And what we're going to be needing. Well, so the World Economic Forum, you may have seen this too. Abe, you're a well-read individual. I might have met my match here. The World Economic Forum published a recent piece that focuses on what chief people officers are observing and predicting through the rest of 2025, right? But it's got some 2026 learnings here. So CPOs seem to align on 3 top disruptive forces reshaping business and talent strategies. AI adoption, we were just talking about that.
Yep.
Talent scarcity, we just talked on that. And then evolving worker expectations, which is really one of my favorite things on this list, because we talk about customer experience all the time, which is important. We got to be talking about worker experience all the time as well. So get this, on the AI adoption issue specifically, the CPOs, chief people officers, top 3 concerns: employees not adapting or learning quickly enough, career stagnation and skills loss due to over-reliance on AI, and ethical and data privacy issues. Those first 2, though, attack some workforce challenges we have. One more point here and get you to react here, because it's not just about AI in terms of worker skill evolution and what's emerging. What are we looking to hire more of? Well, same survey, business acumen and strategic thinking. They 100% of all those CPOs put both of those skill sets of skills, superpowers, in their top 3 success factors. So that was there was a deep piece in World Economic Forum. I recommend everybody go out and read it. But when I think of not only the AI related and technology related skill sets that continue to evolve in our workforce, but leadership, management, thinking skills, which again, what's old is new again, huh?
It's interesting. You point out, sort of future skills, how do we prepare the workforce of the future? And yet the present is where we're having a lot of the challenges in terms of the knowledge and the capabilities. There are a number of studies done in terms of the capabilities of individuals coming out of school right now and what the employers are looking for. Where are we overweighted and where are we underweighted? Not surprisingly, and it supports the World Economic Forum results. We're overweighted in technology and analytics. We're underweighted in real world experience and critical thinking, problem solving. Those are very dangerous combinations, Scott. We have powerful systems that are more, they have much more capabilities than we're really using them, but we have individuals that don't understand the inputs, the outputs, or the process by which the system is determining what solution or what path you should take. That's a dangerous combination in today's environment.
It is. It is a dangerous combination, but you know what? It makes perfect sense because I think of all the technology platforms I've used in my journey, whether I've been when I was in industry, in manufacturing as a practitioner, or now as a digital media entrepreneur. There's all sorts of bells and whistles and advantages that we weren't pulling all the levers. Oftentimes, I think the humans in us, right, was thinking, let's get this done. Whatever the least path of resistance with the technology platforms we use, that's what we do. And we get product out the door because it takes time and it takes creative thinking, strategic thinking, and learning, sometimes hard learning, to stop and say, wait a sec, that's what I did this week. But gosh, if I spend a couple hours here, made these adjustments, push this button, pull this lever, man, next week I can get it done in half the time. And sometimes that's a bridge too far for all of us. And we all got to get better at that.
It's interesting. We talk about the intersection of, the macro environment and some of the micro issues that individuals and organizations are dealing with. The report also points to the tariffs and trade volatility and supply chain disruption, which means that roles and skills are changing faster. I mean, we're no longer, static in terms of what our expectations are. Today's supply chain professional, they've accepted roles and responsibilities that probably 5 or 6 years ago were not on the plate. Cyber, the cybersecurity, sustainability, compliance, geopolitical. How do we prepare the individuals in terms of, how should workers and companies plan for that rate of change when you're putting out fires almost every day, but yet you say, hey, wait a second, be prepared for the future while you're putting out fires today?
Abe, the very first answer that comes on mind, and your question and those topics and those growing issues, especially like cyber. Oh my gosh, it's pretty scary. The rate of complexity and the ever-growing rate of attacks, right? But it starts with organizations that are willing to invest in their workforces, equip them with trusted, proven bodies of knowledge, certifications, training, learning, experiences. And I'll tell you, the gap between organizations that do that are willing to make that investment of time and finite resources, money, you name it, versus those that don't. If you walk into two organizations, you can almost see it in the first hour in the culture. Those empowering organizations that invest in their people and those that really don't, and it's a very transactional culture. That's the only way. It's one of the top proven ways that we're going to be able to continue to overcome the growing and ever-evolving challenges in this VUCA environment that we're all working through.
It's interesting. We talk a little bit about, just referencing the additional roles that supply chain professionals have taken on. And the concept of sustainability and resilience seem to be, two sides of the same coin here in terms of our ability to sustain our operations and meet, consumers and patients' needs alike. The trends note that climate and circularity are moving from compliance to a competitive advantage. Albeit in today's environment, we're seeing less rhetoric around climate and sustainability. A lot of it has to do with the current, administration in terms of the focus areas. But what does it mean for supply chains to shift from a traditional, checkbox activity in terms of, wait a second, this is a differentiator for us as an organization. We will beat the competition based on our sustainability initiatives. Are we there, or are we still crawling into or out of the checkbox compliance mentality?
We, crawling so we can walk, so we can run, so we can sprint, the old adage, right? What's old is new again, right? But let me do this. We're at kind of a tug of war because the AI that we referenced, and we kind of touched on some of the challenges, but there's terrific use cases. One of my favorite anecdotes was an innovative startup that went into a big worldwide food and beverage company, and one segment of their warehouse network was experiencing, on average, 13,000 manual escalations in their warehouse management system. 13,000 on average. Using decision intelligence and AI, right? They're able to take that 13,000 can you imagine the disruptions to the human workforce? They took that 13,000 down to 27, not 2,700, 27. That gives, that's good, so good for the company. But even better, which gets me excited, it makes the days better for the humans, and it frees up their time, and it protects their nights and evenings and weekends. That's the best news and really the good news there. But back to the tug of war, because they continue to enable those types of revolutionary gains when it comes to AI and other technologies. We know the rising energy demands, which is the other side of the tug of war, right? How can we protect the planet, right? Because it's really, but we're going to figure it out because it's not an either or. But let me share this with you, Abe, because this really brought it home to me, because I've been tracking this rising energy demand for quite some time, especially this year. So here in the States, the U.S. Department of Energy expects data center usage of total electricity to grow from 4% last year, 2024, to as much as 12% in 2028. So all that had me digging a little bit more on energy infrastructure and really what's in my neck of the woods here in Georgia. And I found something that offers, I think, compelling perspective of this tug of war and of why we got to find a better way. I pass through this little town of Juliet, Georgia all the time. Juliet was home of, if you remember, again, another movie theme, Fried Green Tomatoes. The Whistle Stop Cafe back in the 80s. It was filmed in Juliet, Georgia. Well, it's also home to Plant Scherer, which is a massive power plant, right? Massive. In fact, I bet you've never heard of it, but a lot of folks haven't heard of it. It is the largest coal-fired power plant in North America. It's one of the largest carbon emitters in the Western Hemisphere. Why does this matter? Well, it matters because Plant Scherer uses coal from the Powder River Basin in Wyoming. Trains bring all that coal down to Georgia, and it's been reported that 2 to 5 trains per day of over 100 cars of coal a day. That's the volume going through that power plant. But why does that matter? Because the operator of that power plant, they see a 9,400 megawatt gain in new electric demand in the next 10 years, mostly from data centers. And so the operator of that plant has had to now extend the life of that to as late as 2039 to keep up. But this electricity gain, as you know, it's not just unique to Georgia or the U.S. The International Energy Agency, it projects the amount of electricity that Japan uses in a year. Well, we're going to gain that in new demand each year through just 2027. So for me, that brings it home. We've got some really hard decisions to make, big shifts to make. We need to look more at green energy. I'm really excited about the next age of nuclear power. I think we're going to find some innovations there. But I am practically optimistic that we can find more revenues and more sales from real sustainability gains because customers demand it. And I think we can still find ways of meeting that demand while leveraging AI and making those gains for the workforce. We just got to find a smarter, better way of procuring and meeting that incredible demand for more juice in a way that protects the planet. So we'll see. It's going to be a tough equation to solve. Yeah. If we can do anything, I know global supply chain can figure it out.
Interesting point you just brought out in terms of supply chain figuring it out. We recently conducted a study with Gartner on sustainability, and not surprisingly found out some things that reinforced what we all know within supply chain. First, mandated initiatives that are aligned with role responsibilities and communicated through the organization have more sustainability, more stickiness for the organization. But one of the key takeaways for me was when you give it to a supply chain professional, it gets done.
Yes.
And that is to me, it was like, of course it is, But to everybody else, it's like, wait a second, why? Because these are doers. These are individuals that are natural problem solvers. You give them the challenge, and they're going to put in the processes, and they're going to put in the initiatives and the resources to solve the problem. So it wasn't a surprise to us that when you give that responsibility to a supply chain professional, it gets done. Are you
Yeah.
surprised by that, Scott?
No, no, I expect that. In fact, if you said anything other than that, I would be shocked. My socks would be blown off. But you know, the cool thing about that, no matter what challenge that we're faced by, and there's no shortage of them. Let's go back to sustainability. Some of the leading companies out there, right? They're making these AI gains while making sustainability gains. It can't
Yeah.
be done,
Yep.
but it goes back to, unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe because it's within our things that we control, leadership.
Yep.
If leadership doesn't make it a priority, it's probably not going to happen. Just like a really smart person told me once, hey, supply chains are going to do whatever we program them to do, right? Those inputs, those priorities. We can solve this. And if anybody can solve anything, it is the beautiful human component that makes up global supply chain and makes it happen every day.
So I'm going to give you till 2030. Looking ahead, Scott, if you had to bet on one major transformation in supply chain and the climate change, sort of sustainability, what's it going to be? Is it going to be fully circular? Is it going to be real-time carbon footprinting? Is it AI-driven material reuse? Where are we headed to? What is going to be a game changer for us?
What is going to be a game changer? Well, I'm not going to start with technology. I'm going to start with the humans, the
Yeah.
people human element, because I think that's where we got to start.
Yep.
And opportunities abound. The best news out there, whether we're talking about 2026 or whether we're talking about 2056, opportunities abound for professionals from all walks of life in global supply chain, right? The powerful workforce we were just referencing, but particularly for those that are willing to lean into the need to continuously learn, apply, adapt is going to remain a powerful mantra, not just for 2026, but the foreseeable future. And we have proven, global supply chain has proven. I mean, I look at the folks and the organizations and the workforce that got us through, hopefully, a once in a lifetime pandemic where everything was new. Who got us through that, right? When I didn't know our three kids, we were homeschooling, had 37 platforms. We were trying to balance all this stuff. And I tell you, our incredible, brave, fearless supply chain workforce got us through all of that and protected our sanity and our conveniences to get uh, um, basic food, basic like a comfort, you name it. So if we can figure that out, we're going to figure out the sustainability and the climate change, and we're going to find a way to find a um, a bold new balance to protect technology, the most radical and remarkable technology innovations that continue that are blowing our socks off every day, but balance that with the power from more sustainable means that protects our planet, which is, I think, kind of important to all of us.
Scott, last question for our listeners out there who may be early career or mid-career professionals. What steps would you recommend to prepare themselves for this interconnected AI work and global supply chains? What would you recommend to them?
Uh, so a couple thoughts. Number one, and I know this from personal experience. I'm not sure if I shared it with you here, Abe, but I started college in computer science, right? And right when I started to code and the iterative nature and all the homework that took, I was like, this just isn't for me. It's not my superpower. And I learned that, right? And so then my path took a much less technologist driven route, right? That's fine. We need all folks from all walks of life. But what it's taught me now, as you know, years and years later, is I've got to learn and try and really approach what the seemingly unapproachable technology and unlock it first from a personal perspective so I understand it better. And then I kind of figure out, why does it matter? Where can I apply this, especially in my personal journey? And then once we have some gains there, you share it with the team.
Uh,
And I think a lot of studies out there, there's a lot of folks saying that they're using AI or other technologies, but the reality is they may jump on a platform, press a button. I was just talking about this earlier today. Press a button, but they get stuck with, okay, so what? What does this do for me? And then we stop. All of us
yeah.
have done that. So my advice would be for all of this, especially mid-career folks looking to move up the ladder, get in the C-suite, you name it, your next promotion, take the time, whether it's technology or everything else impacting global supply chain. What's more important? What's most important to you? Where do you want to go? Work backwards. What are the key topics or technologies or problems or disciplines you need to understand? Start there. Invest your time there, but start personally, and then you can apply it professionally. And then the second piece, you got to get started today. Don't put it off. This, if there's one thing that has been evident from the very first podcast, webinar, remote show, in-person show, maybe my first supply chain role, Abe, the pace of business, supply chain velocity, it's not static. It is increasing every day. So every hour, every day you wait, you put it off, you get work done, you work on the company versus, or work in the company versus on the company. Hey, you're costing yourself and you're costing your career and your team. Get started today and you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it.
Scott, extraordinary advice. I really appreciate your insight. And for those of you who want to hear a little bit more about Scott, tune into his Supply Chain Now podcast. Scott, the conversation will always continue for you and I. Can't thank you enough for joining us today.
Hey, Abe, really appreciate the invite. Well done to the whole team. Really enjoyed Change North America up in Columbus. We've got a slew of great interviews we're publishing soon with some of the movers and shakers you had there. And keep doing what you're doing.
I appreciate it, Scott. All the best. Talk to you soon.